recording this meeting. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Christy Ramos. I'm the Department Chair of Student Services at Ardrey-Kell, and this is a presentation for rising senior parents to get some more registration information for your students. I will have a couple of counselors hopping on in a few minutes to answer questions in the chat. The way that I'm looking at the screen right now with Teams, I can't actually see if you raise your hand or if you put something in the chat. So the chat will be getting answered as they hop on. You'll see Maria McCourt and Heather Schiffman will be in the chat. So just know that I can't actually see the chat right now. Teams is, even though we've had it for a year and a half now, it still feels somehow very foreign to me. But thank you so much for coming. We appreciate you being here, taking the time to think about your child's schedule, to think about what they need to graduate. Again, tonight we're just talking about rising seniors. We will have another parent night for rising 10th and 11th graders, and then another one for rising 9th graders. So if you have questions about those, or if you have other students who are of that age, then please hold your questions for that night so that we can keep everything concise and appropriate for just rising senior parents. Okay, so there's a couple of resources that your students were given on
me right there.
Tuesday.
How much you want to
Everybody
bet?
could,
Your face.
if everybody could
See?
mute themselves.
What is that? Why?
That's me.
Okay.
Hang on. Could you mute yourself, please? Here, I'll mute you. There we go. Okay. Okay, so all the students on Tuesday got a registration card. It's green. They got a early release and late arrival contract. They got a course planner and a copy of their transcript. So all those students have all those resources plus our registration site. We're going to take a look at the registration site as we go. But just know those are the pieces that the students received. This is the process, again, just for rising seniors. We're only talking about one grade level right now. So from the 3rd to the 9th, students are going to be working on their cards. We're asking them to get input from their teachers, from you, from their friends, and use all the registration resources to make informed decisions about what they're doing. Here's something super important that I would love for everybody to hear. What they put into the computer on Monday and Tuesday next week is not final by any means. This is the first time they're entering into the computer. We will meet with them individually in December. So from December 11th to the 20th, right up until break, we're going to meet with 4 homerooms a day, and they'll have that one-on-one appointment with us just like they always do. So if your student isn't sure about a class and doesn't get a chance to talk to their counselor in advance, they will have that time for one-on-one where we're actually going to make adjustments to their schedule. So on Monday, they're going to take all the requests that they have made and put it into the computer. The reason it's happening so early for this grade level in particular is because the entire state of North Carolina is moving to a new computer system next year called Infinite Campus. You'll hear about that. So no longer PowerSchool, it'll be Infinite Campus. And because of that transition, we have to be done with registration about 2 months earlier than we normally are. So we have to push this grade level up a little bit. We figure since this is the 4th time that most of them are doing it, that they should be pretty comfortable and familiar with the process, and they should, it's kind of second nature to them now. Okay, so like I said, in December, we're going to meet with everybody. And again, we'll go through the registration website as it comes up. On the registration card, it is, like I said, it is a green color. We want them to complete the demographic information at the top, and they're still going to choose 8 classes. We know that most seniors are not in the building for 4 classes a day, both semesters. Many, many, many seniors take off a period, whether it's early release, which is where they go home early, or late arrival, where they come in late. Many seniors take advantage of that, but they still have to mark 8 selections on the card. The late arrival and early release is on the back of the card, and they do select it as a course. So this is the registration website, and this is the registration card. And on the back, you can see here at the bottom that they do have those as options: fall early release, spring early release and late arrival, and then A-Day, B-Day release. Some of this might not make sense to you. I can assure you it makes sense to your student. Okay. So they still have to select, oh, go to my other tab. They still have to select 8 options or 8 classes, excuse me. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. The little bar at the top is blocking and I can't go to the next tab. Go back. There we go. Okay. All right. And they still need to choose 4 alternates. Okay, something new that we gave to students and we're really seeing them take advantage of is this course planner. It is a paper that lays out all of the graduation requirements. It's very similar to the one that counselors use to actually check to be sure they're on track to graduate. So this is already something that we're doing. We're just putting the ownership in the students' hands now. So they would check off their English classes by looking at their transcript. They can check off the math classes they've taken, and they can see what classes they have remaining. 80% of seniors only need English and economics. Those are really the only 2 that students have left. Many students, of course, choose to take a lot of other classes, but it's very rare for a student graduation requirement-wise to need more than English and economics. Many students choose to take math or an additional science class or, obviously some AP electives or something, but for the most part, that's generally all that's left. Now, if your student was looking at their transcript and filling out the course planner and found that there's some discrepancy and noticing my biology grade is not on here, then they would definitely need to let their counselor know as soon as possible. Okay, so things to pay attention to. This is really more for the students to see things that have changed from last year, but good for you guys to know as well. Most world languages are now 1 semester long. This is a big change for many students. Most of CMS transitioned to 1 semester languages last year. Ardrey kept it to year-long for this year, and but next year we are going to have to move to 1 semester language. This does mean that there is a chance that your student might have, Spanish 3 right now and wouldn't have Spanish 4 until 2nd semester of their senior year. That is true, and that's okay. That's the same thing with math sometimes. We don't expect many seniors to be taking advantage of 2 1-semester language classes, but they are able to take 2 if they would like. They're able to take Spanish 2 and 3, Spanish 3 and 4. Like, they can do that, but we don't expect many seniors to take advantage of that. AP macroeconomics and AP microeconomics do not replace economics and personal finance. Again, some of this is just nuance mostly for your students, but good for you to know as well. AP Calculus, we teach it 3 different ways, and so we ask students to pick the way that feels right to them or what makes sense for them. The other thing to know is if your student is right now in AP Pre-Calculus and not having a great time and feeling like it's a little bit more difficult than they expected and do not want to continue in AP Calculus, that is okay. It doesn't say this on the card, but they can go from AP Pre-Calculus to AP Statistics, or from AP Pre-Calculus to a CPCC math class. That is okay. They don't have to go to calculus. That is not a requirement. We added applications on the registration website for the help desk class, which is helping out in the media center with technology support and media center support for the yearbook and for Unified Sports. Unified Sports is a leadership class for students to work with our extensions EC kids, helping them with their PE class. So those 3 applications have been added to the registration website, and every senior or Verizon senior has been emailed about that. Students who are currently in chorus, band, and orchestra only, chorus, band, and orchestra, we're asking them to select their current class that they're enrolled in right now. And after they have January midterm auditions, then we'll change their course request. So if you have a student who's in let's say a symphonic band and they are feeling like they're going to move to wind ensemble next year, that is possible, but for right now they need to select symphonic band, and then we will make those changes once they have those auditions. And then we do have a couple new CTE courses for seniors, Honors Computer Science 2 if they've taken Honors Computer Science 1. We have a class called Teaching as a Profession Honors. This is going to be a class where students who want to do teaching as a profession, ideally, will be able to work with Knightsview Elementary across the street. And then we also have Health Science 2 Honors, which is the 3rd biomedical class. So if you have a student who's taken biomedical science, Human Body Systems. The third class is now called Health Science 2 Honors. So we definitely encourage students to do that if they're on that pathway. And then again, things can change. It is only December. We have until the end of March to actually submit everything to the district. So we know that things can change. We know that it is very, very early. We know that most of these kids haven't even seen their second semester class. They have no idea if they like marketing 1 because it's second semester. They have no idea how math 3 is going to go because it's second semester. We know that. There will be a change week in March this year. So we're asking them to complete this process now with their best intentions. We know that in March, we're going to have a very open change week. You guys are definitely used to the change process of the past, which was very limited and pretty inflexible, I'd say. The March change process is going to be definitely expanded where a student can truly make adjustments in any way possible. We're expecting that we'll have at least 3 or 4 counselors at lunch every single day for at least a week, making whatever changes a student is asking for based on how second semester goes. So we're going to have a more robust change process before we submit to the district so that we can make better plans for our students. Okay, early release and late arrival, like I said, students are able to do that if they, as long as their core classes are on their schedule, they can take off whatever else. There are some limitations, of course. Students have to be enrolled in at least 2 classes each semester. So a student can come for first and second, second and third and fourth, but they can't have a gap in the middle. We don't have anywhere to put them. The other thing about early release and late arrival is that they cannot be on campus. So if you foresee that transportation is going to be an issue, they cannot have early release and late arrival. They can't get a ride 3 days a week and the other 2 days go to the media center or go to the cafeteria. That's not a thing. We have about 800 students who take advantage of early release and late arrival between juniors and seniors, and we just don't have a place for all of them. And we cannot make exceptions. So if you feel like that's going to be an issue, then please be sure you guys are talking about that. It does not guarantee parking either. So if your student is not going to get a parking spot, they're not going to have their license, whatever the case is, it does not guarantee a parking spot. Mid-year graduation, some students choose to just go ahead and be done at the halfway point of next year. If that's something that your student is interested in, just have them speak to their counselor about it over the next 2 weeks when we meet with them individually. Students do this for all kinds of reasons. Some kids like to take just CPCC classes in the spring. Some kids want to go ahead and work. Some kids are just over it and want to be done, and that's okay. We are supportive of any plan that a student comes up with that they feel is best for them. This is not something where kids can enroll in college early. They would not necessarily start in college spring of next year if they mid-year graduate. That is not the purpose of it, and colleges would not accept them at that point, just so you're aware. AP classes, at this point, you're pretty familiar with those as a student has been able to pick them for 4 years. The main thing I want you to know is that if you are curious about AP classes, maybe your student has never taken one, or you're curious about hearing more specifically about a class that your student is interested in taking, on our registration website, there is an AP info page. We're having an AP parent night on January 14th. Again, this is after your student is going to turn in their registration. That is okay. You can still come to our AP information night virtually, and then in March that your student can make changes to their registration if they choose to based on AP information night. That's okay. So on this page, there is a AP course guide. And in this course guide, it talks about what do they need to be successful in an AP class? What is it? What types of classes are good for the things that I'm good at? Over here, there's a video from each teacher who teaches it about what it is and a description page. And there's a lot of resources for you to access to understand better the load of an AP class. And again, the parent night is here. Okay, now let me see if I can get back to it. Oh boy. Oh, there we go. Okay. Dual enrollment, I know this is why many of you are on this meeting, and that is okay. Dual enrollment is when a student takes college classes at CPCC. This is not to cover any of their graduation requirements. So a student still has to take all of their graduation requirements at Ardrey-Kell. However, a student could choose to take a class that is similar to a class at Ardrey Kell at CPCC. So some students choose to take English 111, writing and inquiry at CPCC, and they're taking English 4. That's okay. They can do that. It just doesn't replace the CPCC class, does not replace the AK class. So they can choose to do up to 10 classes total between AK and CPCC. So a student can really take advantage of this. One thing to know about CPCC classes now is that a lot of them are online, so students can choose to take them virtually, and most of our students do. It is a little bit of a pain to get uptown from Ardrey Kell. There are other campuses, of course. There's the South Boulevard one, there's the Matthews one, but I think most of our students do take their classes online if they're doing dual enrollment. The other thing is, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. What else was I going to say about CPCC? Well, moving on, the registration process for CPCC doesn't open until February. So again, you're thinking, how is this going to work? How is it, here's what we as the counselors and the master scheduler care the most about in this moment in the next 3 weeks. We want to know what classes your student is definitely taking at AK and when they're not going to be here. We're wanting to assume that if your student is serious about taking CPCC classes, that they're going to sign up and follow through with that process. So we are not really hoping that a student would say, well, I'm going to sign up for AP Bio and then sign up for it at CPCC. And if I change my mind at CPCC, at least I have a spot in AP Bio. We're really wanting students to set their schedule with what they're ideally going to take and have their plans about CPCC happening at the same time and follow through with those plans in February and March. Again, March, we're going to have a change week. So we know things are tentative right now, but we still want a student to, if they know, especially if they're taking CP this year and they know that they're going to continue with some of those, we want them to share that with us and let us know, what are you actually going to take at CP at AK, which periods do you need early release, and then make sure you follow up on the process when it opens in February. If things happen, things change, then in March you can make those adjustments. But again, we're really trying to, we spent a lot of time this summer making adjustments that we could have fixed during registration if a student had kind of communicated their dual enrollment plans a little bit better. We know this is early. It's a lot to ask a student to kind of take on right now, but this is actually a great way to train them to get used to enrolling in college classes on their own, because as soon as they step off to college, every semester they have to do it by themselves. So this is a great time for them to advocate for themselves, learn about the process, do the whole thing. So again, this is a great time for students to take advantage of this opportunity. I remember what I was going to say earlier. The classes are now only 9 weeks long. So they're essentially 1 quarter long is how you can think of it. So your student might have a class from August to mid-October, or they might have a class from mid-October to December. So it's possible that throughout the whole semester, AK semester, your kid might only have a CPCC class for 9 of those weeks. And that's okay. That's just how they're choosing to do it so they can get more students in and run the classes a little bit faster. Let me show you the AK the website that has all this information on it. Okay, so right now there's still spring enrollment information, again, because there's not much yet. But if you watch this video, the information about pathways, about the classes you can choose, that kind of stuff will be in this video. So this video is helpful now. I would definitely encourage you to watch it. And then if you scroll down, it just talks about the different classes. This is where a student can choose what classes they want to take. It has to be in a certain grouping. So, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I'm in the office and the motion sensor light turned off. But if a student, CPCC does not want a student to just look at their catalog and say, I want this and that and that and that and that. They have grouped them into pathways so that a student can stay a little bit more focused on what classes make the most sense together. So for example, in the science transfer pathway, they're going to have more like biology and math type classes, where in the arts transfer pathway, it's going to be more social sciences and English and language. So that's just a way to group them together. And then down here at the bottom will be dates and deadlines once it comes up. I don't know why. Oh, there we go. He'll always make some sort of chart that has the dates and deadlines, and then all the steps on what to do are down here. So it's not as simple as your student just saying to their counselor, I want to sign up for biology at CPCC. There is a detailed and intricate process that they have to follow on that website. So just know that's part of it. But for your students' purposes right now, we want them to plan for taking it and select their classes at AK that are appropriate while considering CPCC at the same time, if that's something they're interested in. Okay. So now what? What else are we asking students to do? We're asking them to peruse our registration website, look at the course descriptions. We'll look at that together in a minute. Talk to your teachers about what they recommend for you, especially if somebody's in like AP pre-calculus, for example, and if they're hovering at an 87 and they're like, well, the tests are hard, but I've been able to manage. What should I do? Talk to your AP pre-cal teacher. They have a really good sense of if a student would be successful if they're like, you know what, maybe let's think about AP stat for you so that you're not fully overwhelmed and in over your head senior year. Email your counselor with specific questions. We're actually going to have a table, and we've had a table for the last 2 days out at lunch, at all the lunches for students to approach us and ask questions. We will have that through Friday. So if your student has questions and you're like, I don't know, during their lunch period, they can come up to the table and ask us any questions they have. The students will be entering their cards on Monday. And so that's when we're asking them to actually input all their classes. And then we'll start meeting with them next Wednesday through the last day of break, talking one-on-one about their course selections. Again, in March, there will be a process to change their requests. Okay, so let's go back to the registration site just to show you a couple of things. Dates here, you don't really need, but if you have a younger student, this could be helpful for you. I've put all the dates in one place. But again, if you just have a rising senior, this will be over in 2 weeks. This is kind of the big event. Applications and materials, like I was saying, this is where the applications for yearbook, media, unified sports, an extra copy of the contract if you can't find it. If you want to see the registration card, it's right here. FAQs, so a lot of the questions that we get asked a lot, how do I know what to take? What's the difference between some of these classes? How do I learn about this stuff? Can I double up? AP information we already looked at. Resources, this is more general stuff. We do have a course description guide. So with the exception of a couple of our new classes like teaching as a profession, we actually haven't gotten a course description from CMS about that yet. But we do have a course description guide written by the teachers of the courses for every single class. So if you are not sure about what, for example, AP calculus will look like, you can just click here and it'll take you right to the description of what that looks like. The course planner, there's a copy of that paper I was showing you that a student can plan out all their classes. A math sequencing chart, science sequencing chart, all that's on there. Graduation requirements, so what's exactly required for graduation. Let's see what else. What is dual enrollment? We talked about that. NCVPS, those are additional online classes. Not a ton of offerings that seniors take advantage of. I'll just tell you now, there's only 2 honors classes, honors Python and honors psychology. And then there's AP European history are kind of the main 3 that if a student is interested, they'll take. But there are some fun electives on there. So it's definitely something to explore. If your student is like, I don't really see anything else that I'm interested in, they could definitely look into some NCVPS classes. Let's see what else is over here. Let me move this little thing. All the presentations. So when I'm done with this, I will put the recorded version up here, but this is just the presentation itself. This is the general presentation for all students. And then there's one more page. I'm sorry, this is just tough to navigate. Oh, and then rising 9th graders, which of course you guys likely don't need, but if you have a rising 9th grader, some information is there. Okay, so I'm going to come out of this screen so that I can see what's happening over here. I'm going to open up the chat. Okay, so what questions do you have? That's all of the presentation. What kind of questions do you have? You can put them in the chat or you can come off of mute. I see somebody raise their hand, ping. Go ahead.
Yes, I just check on the CPCC page. It says that the date for AK student enrollment, the deadline is November.
That was for the spring. So for a student to take CPCC classes for this semester right now. So what I was referring to is more of classes for this summer and this coming fall. So that's in February that will open. So you're seeing the deadline for what's happening right now. But your student, your rising senior, won't do the registration process for this coming summer and this coming fall until February.
Until February.
Yeah.
Okay, so but we haven't know the registration deadline for the Rising 12.
Yeah. So we're asking them to go ahead and do registration and think about CPCC. And then let's say your student isn't planning on it at this point. That's okay. But then in February, they go ahead and sign up. Well, then in March, they can say, hey, can you drop AP microeconomics off my schedule? I signed up for microeconomics at CPCC. Like that's okay. And that's why we're having that big change week in March.
Okay, got it. So current page shows all the data is not for the Rising 12s.
It's not for next year. It's just for what's happening right now. The information is still good and won't change, but it's not necessarily for what I was just talking about, right?
Okay, we can just use all the course introduction for reference.
Right.
But the data is not just accurate. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Correct. Yeah, thanks for asking. Okay, yes, graduation assignment. So yes, your student, Pawan Kurtikar, they can take CDM. CDM is credit by demonstrated mastery. That's when a student tests out of a class. So there's a process for that in February and a process in the summer. If a student passes their CDM class, a class that they try to do the CDM test for, we make adjustments to their schedule. In this case, earth science, that usually has a decently high pass rate. A lot of kids try to test out of economics. That doesn't go well, usually. I think last year we had 6 out of like 60 kids pass. And then for English 4, I've never had a student pass out of English 4. So in general, I would not tell your students to spend a lot of time spend their summer studying for econ CDM or English CDM because we just don't have a great pass rate with it. And it's really not that much skin off their back when it comes to it in the fall. What other questions?
I have following up on that. Can she do more than one required class as a CDM, or is there a restriction?
Yeah, a student can take as many as they want. We generally, students usually do one. I've seen kids do attempt 2 or 3. The good news is if, let's say, your student attempts it and doesn't pass, nothing happens. It doesn't go on a record. There's no, we don't put it on their transcript, nothing like that. But if they pass, it gets put on there. So the good news is there's no harm in trying. But again, the purpose of CDM is to prove that you already have the knowledge. So CMS, the state, not even CMS, would say, I should be able to give you that test today and you should pass it at 95%. That's the intention of it. It's not intended for students to spend 2 months studying so they don't have to take a class. But we've definitely had kids have some success. We have a lot of students be very successful with CDMing their first language. So many of our students from Russia, Ukraine, Spanish students, students who can speak Hindi, definitely take advantage of CDM to get 2 language credits as well, which is kind of nice. So if your student's in that situation, that's also a great way to get some language credits.
Okay, thank you.
Ping, if a student already finished 5 math courses by the end of 11th grade, do they need to take another? No, it is not required for a student to take a math their senior year. However, if they are interested in attending a 4-year college, it is in their best interest. Colleges do not love to see a student They might say slacking in senior year by not taking a math class. So we don't advise a student to not take a math their senior year if they're interested in a four-year college. If a student says, I'm going into a trade, I'm going to CPCC for sure. If they say, I am going to go straight to work, that's fine. But we would want to make sure that like a parent has talked to them and to make sure we have that conversation as well. So we definitely encourage a student to take a math class every year.
Ms. Ramos,
Yes.
the registration card, the courses on here, there's no possibility of any additions or changes to these courses?
Generally, no. What are you not seeing?
So my student wasn't able to do PLTW Introduction to Engineering last year because the
Mm.
teacher had left unexpectedly.
Mhm.
And this year they could not take it because
Same.
the path that they wanted to follow, they would have had to leave the other AP course that they really wanted to do.
And the same thing, we didn't have it this year either. Same thing, the teacher left at the end of the summer. And so unfortunately, we have canceled that pathway. So at no grade, we don't have PLTW engineering anymore, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so it's not even, it won't even be on the younger grades cards, unfortunately. It's a big bummer. We're pretty upset about it, because it's such a great class for so many students, and it's just something we just can't seem to staff. It's very unfortunate.
Thank you.
Yep. If your student is over it, as you mentioned, and only needs the 2 classes, what are their options? So if your student is over it, what they can do is, and what we have students do, is they could come in just for English and Econ, if those are the 2 they need. And they could have double early release, which is where they leave for 3rd and 4th period. They could have double late arrival, where they don't come in until 3rd block if sleeping is an issue. And then they graduate mid-year. And so that means that they actually finish their classes when we take first semester exams in January. And then they walk in a CMS graduation ceremony with about, I'm going to say 400 other students. This year we have 45 from AK. Who are mid-year graduates, and they all sit together and they walk across stage. It's a ceremony with the superintendent, a speaker, like the whole thing. It's at the Coliseum. There's a program. They get their diploma. It's just not with their class. So that is one option. A student can also mid-year finish. So I was just talking about mid-year graduate, which is walk across stage. Mid-year finish is when a student is done after first semester, but then commits to at least 2 CPCC classes in the spring, still never comes into AK, never, not once sets foot in AK second semester, but they're still connected to AK so that they can walk with their class in June. And that's called mid-year finish. So a student doesn't need to know which one they would want to do right now. That's okay. They just select mid-year grad in the system. And then next year in September, we get them all together for a meeting and say, which one are you going to do? So that's kind of the option for students to do that if they are, as I said, over it. We have a lot of kids who are over it.
I have a quick question. If
Okay.
a student does do the mid-year walk,
Mhm.
are they and they're still considered an AK student, are they not eligible to play spring sports?
Correct. If they graduate, walking across the stage disconnects you from AK completely.
Okay.
If they mid-year finish, they are still eligible for spring sports because they'll be enrolled in at least 2 classes.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
They
So
just have
that's
to
the
take,
difference.
thank you for bringing that up. If your student is a spring athlete, they have to take at least 3 classes in the fall. One of them one or two can be CPCC, but that's the biggest thing that we find with track, women's soccer, baseball. I'm trying to think what else is a spring. I can't think of what the other big one is. Somebody's yelling at their computer right now, but either way, if your student is a spring athlete or thinks they might be a spring athlete, they have to sign up for 3 classes in the fall. It is critical. Very, very, very
Okay.
important.
I'm glad I asked. Thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so some questions about calculus. Yep. Okay, so Miss Chisholm, the most important thing is that your student will talk, if their last name is Chisholm, they'll talk to Miss DePerno during their registration appointment, and she will take a look at all the math that your student has taken and look at the grades and look at their performance and help your student pick the math class that's going to be best for them based on, do they like math? Are they really interested in it? Is it better for them to take, just Calc AB? Or is it better to take A, B, and BC, the harder option? Your student will absolutely have a conversation with his counselor in the next 2 weeks about that for sure. Okay, a mid-year graduate, mid-year finish again. A mid-year graduate is somebody who walks across the stage and is disconnected after first semester, gets their diploma, they're done. A mid-year finish just stops coming in January, takes at least 2 CPCC classes in the spring, stays connected to AK, but never comes in, and then walks with the class in June. Go ahead, Honey Kumar.
The question was regarding the early release and late arrival contract. If it happens that the schedule turns out that they do not need an early release or late arrival contract, even then they do have to sign the contract and give it to the counselor, right?
No, So if your student is planning to have 8 periods at AK, they do not need to turn in the contract. No.
Okay.
Yeah, we just go ahead and give it to every senior because it is so likely that they are going to need it. And honestly, since you're here and you're aware of what's going on, it's really most schools don't do it. I'm pretty sure most schools do not have any kind of contract at all, but we just want to make sure that the parent is informed of the choice that the student is making, because we have had situations in the past where a parent says, I didn't know they took 4th block off. I'm like, well, you signed it. You just didn't read what you signed, or your student signed it on your behalf. So it's really more of a fail-safe for us later than a full permission from you, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Understood.
Yeah. Okay. What other questions do we have?
Oh, yes, I have another question. So if the math course my son take in 12th grade, if the math course is a year-long course, so he cannot choose mid-year finished, which means he
Correct.
can. Okay, got it.
Correct. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a great point. A student cannot be a mid-year anything, mid-year grad or mid-year finish, if they're planning on taking any year-long class at all, whether it be an AP class, a theater class, an art class, anything at all. You cannot take a year-long class and be a mid-year finish or mid-year grad. So if that's the case, but your student really wants to maximize their time out of the building, those students generally come in just for first and second block and then leave after homeroom.
Okay, thank you.
So they only need 3 classes or 4. So it all depends. They have to be enrolled in 2 classes each semester to be considered a student. The number of classes they needs depends on their graduation requirements. Most students just need English, economics, and maybe a math class. And so generally most students are looking at 2 or 3 classes required, but they'll usually take somewhere between 4 and 6. That's kind of that's like kind of how many most seniors take. Biomed is not an option for seniors. CMS is really making a push towards pathways, which is where a student starts in one type of class and then continues in the CTE department, the career and technical education, and then really follows that chain of classes to get a certification along the way. And so Biomed, they try to grow the program in 9th and 10th grade. And then in the other levels is when they take the higher level classes. So unfortunately, Biomed is not an option for seniors and has not historically been. Economics and personal finance is a graduation requirement. Yes, there is no opting out of it, unfortunately.
Hi, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to take the two CCPP courses at a time, like AB Biology and AP Chemistry? Is there any limitation? Only this combination has to take. Is there any limitation?
No, no, the only limitation is what's offered in the pathway. So the only limitation that a student has when it comes to what they're taking at CPCC is the classes that are offered in the pathway they have selected. The pathways are generally pretty big, but that's kind of the only thing. If a student chooses to take AP Biology at AK and Biology at CPCC, I personally think there isn't really a point in doing that, but you can. We would not, they don't like X each other out or anything like that. But a student, there is no limitation. It's just they can't take a graduation requirement at CPCC. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. No, yes. So Stacy says, I assume they don't have to take all the courses in the pathway they select. No, they definitely do not have to. It's just what CMS hopes they will do. But they definitely, if a student is taking, let's say, drafting 1 right now and drafting 2 is in the pathway, it is highly encouraged that they take drafting 2, but it is not required at all. Most of the pathways now are only 2 classes, so it's kind of a misnomer a little bit to say pathway. In fact, at AK, the only true 3-course pathway is the biomedical one. Oh, and you're talking, I'm sorry, I see now, Ms. Shipman. You're talking about CPCC pathway. No, they do not have to take all the classes. Again, it's just a grouping. They can take 1, they can take 5, but they don't have to take all of them by any means. Whatever they take at CPCC is just what they get credit for. That's it. CPCC classes do count towards GPA. Most all of them count as an AP weighted course. So they would get 5 GPA points for an A instead of 4 GPA points for an A. There is one category of classes, they're career and technical education classes at CPCC that are not weighted that way. It is laid out pretty clearly on the website that I showed you. Okay, well, we appreciate you guys for coming. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. Stop recording. I really appreciate you guys coming.